Well, Anthony's a brilliant guy, and I don't think he could really qualify as my protege. That would be very flattering to me. But in a sense, there is a public sector, there is public service, there is public spiritedness, but you sure don't find it in government. Think of any bureaucrat you've ever dealt with. Where do you find public spiritedness? Only in the private sector. Businessmen, physicians, the clergy, in commerce, the guy who works all night keeping his little store open so you can go get a Diet Coke when you want one. That's public service, not putting on a uniform and going killing people for the government in foreign countries, or having a big salary and a big limo in Washington. The monster McCain keeps talking about that he's dedicated his life to public service, and he's had 3 generations of public service. And they've been parasites off the taxpayers, his grandfather, his father, and him. And we're supposed to think that this is actually morally superior to be living off your fellow citizens at the point of a gun by force. This is supposed to be, we're supposed to think this is actually a good thing. It actually makes him a criminal. Of course, he's a criminal. And that doesn't differentiate him from Obama, or they're all criminals. Maybe some of them less criminal. Maybe Obama is, I used to think, maybe less likely to start a war. I must say I'm not so sure about that after some of his recent speeches. But when they call it public service, it's actually ripping you off for their own benefit. When they call it the private sector, that's where the actual public service goes on.
I have to tell you a story. I don't want to be too detailed, but there's a favorite writer of mine who's some brand of leftist, I'm not entirely sure, and he came away from the Future Freedom Foundation Restoring the Republic conference, I believe a changed man, shocked to see that libertarianism does not mean an apologia for the rich white man's anarchy where Dick Cheney and his buddies get to go do whatever they want and not even have to help the poor people with food stamps. But in fact, here he saw Anthony Gregory, Robert Higgs, yourself, Jacob Hornberger, and the rest of these people speaking, and saw that, wait, this is the libertarianism that's supposed to apply to the life of that anonymous dead Iraqi kid. This is libertarianism for the least among us, the most powerless among us, not, corporate America is the persecuted minority that we have to be careful and look out for.
Well, it's true, and of course there unfortunately are libertarians who are, tend to be funded by oil plutocrats and who are connected to the government and the biggest funders of the Republican Party and those sorts of guys, and they're not the type to appeal to your friend. In fact, they're pillars of the establishment. And they exist and are paid and are successful in living it up because they serve the state. But then there are the real libertarians, the people who actually believe that human liberty is the first and really the only goal of all politics. And if we're an anarchist, we believe that, of course, the goal should be complete freedom and from coercion. And I was like Stephan Kinsella's description of what an anarchist is. It's somebody who believes that it's never moral to initiate force against the innocent or to threaten the initiation of force against the innocent. And when you tell people that, they guess, well, I don't believe in doing that. I don't believe in initiating force against the innocent. But then, of course, it turns out they believe in taxation. They believe in regulation. They believe in, forcing kids to go to public schools and, all the rest of the coercions of the government. So if you are a real libertarian, I would argue, you believe that it is never moral to initiate force against the innocent or to threaten the initiation of force. And if, it doesn't mean that you necessarily know how such a society would be organized. Doesn't mean that you might think that it's ever possible to get to that sort of society. But it just means you think that what they do is immoral and you want to oppose it to the best of your ability. And I should mention that take a look at Stephan Kinsella's, Kinsella's archive on LewRockwell.com. That article and a lot of other great articles there, too.
We sure will, and we'll link to it in the blog entry for this interview as well. And now, before I let you go, Lew, if you still have a moment, I'd like to give you an opportunity to say something nice about Ron Paul's new book, because I'm sure you got it in you.
What a great book. I mean, in some sense, you can think of many things that have been the outcome of Ron's campaign, which, as you may know, he's closed down. his presidential campaign is closed down.
I didn't know that it had
today.
officially.
Yeah, it closes down officially today, and he's starting a new educational and political organization. I guess he'd be talking about at his big rally in Houston tonight, next to the horrible Republican state convention. But there are many things that his campaign, in terms of educating young people and getting them interested in issues like the Federal Reserve. By the way, if you ever encounter a libertarian who's pro-Fed, that's all you need to know about them. They're not actually for liberty. So against the Federal Reserve, against the warfare state, against interventionist foreign policies of all sorts, for the free market, against government regulation, against the income tax, and so forth. He's mobilized people, more 1.2 million votes, but I think that just begins to indicate the kind of influence he's had. But one great concrete part of his legacy is this book, The Revolution, a Manifesto. It's not a long book. It's, I think, 170 pages long. But it's so well written and so packed full of great libertarian principles. It explains what he's about, what the ideas that he has dedicated his life to. And really, this book it's the kind of book, very few books in this category. It's the kind of book that you can actually give to some member of your family, a neighbor, a student, a friend, your father or whatever, and change their lives on these issues. I mean, it has that kind of persuasive power. So everybody ought to pick up a copy. It's on the New York Times bestseller list, and rightly so. It's a very great book.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for your time very much today, Lew. It's not quite as difficult to say the things that you're saying now, but in the dark days of late 2001, 2002, 2003, when the flag waving and the denunciation were all so loud that most people were too afraid to speak up, you were shining the light there at LewRockwell.com and at the Mises Institute, and you haven't had to backtrack and improve your rhetoric since those days, because you got it right all along, and there are a lot of us who really appreciate that.
Well, you're very nice, Scott. Thank you, and thanks for having me on today.
And everybody, you'll be able to watch Lew Rockwell's speech at the Future Freedom Foundation's website. That's fff.org, and right now you can read the transcript of it at LewRockwell.com. Our enemy, the Fed. You can find it right there in Lew's archives, also titled War and Inflation, and we'll link right to it in the entry here. Antiwar Radio, Chaos 92.7 FM in Austin.